Alright, so this is going to be the abbreviated version of my phaser workflow in version 2250. This is going to be for anybody who has a strong grasp on the concepts that I'm explaining and just needs to see the steps that I'm putting it all together in. So first thing, you need to understand this store MA3 universal macro. It's everything that the title says it is. We're storing universal and we're making sure MA3 does get stored in. By default, I keep my MA3 storing turned off because anytime I'm storing a Q value or storing a position preset, storing a color preset, I don't want it on. That's why it is turned on here explicitly. So just as a starting example, if I grab all my tornado cells, let's turn off highlight, and I do a, let's say a narrow ramp down, we'll put a phase on that and some wings, store MA3 universal, that creates our universal preset here. Now, let's say I grab that, but also wanted to go in and tweak the transition on step 2, perhaps. And let's say on that step, we're going to tweak the deceleration value. Not sure how this got scrolled to where it did. And on the previous step, all right, I'm going to set acceleration to 100. So I'm making it kind of a steeper spike down. If I store that, you'll see this selective appear. Just click it, store again, overwrite. That gets rid of that. I'm not entirely sure what that selective bit is, but I've made a habit of just store it. If you see the S, grab it, store overwrite again, and most of the time it's gone. Anytime it's not, that's when you have actual selective information that you've caught somehow. So get rid of this guy. We'll call this spikes down. And then we're going to turn this into a recipe, convert into a recipe. I've got two options for this. The turn into single line recipe is our default version. I'll just show you both. Convert to single line recipe, you're going to grab the tornado cells and it creates a recipe line that has, we've converted our previous recipe into a recipe line. That's where these values are living now. And we've applied the tornado group in this case to that. The other version is that we do a multi-line recipe, same group, new preset. And what we've done instead here is that we've taken that information from our preset, moved it into the first recipe line, and then we have other recipe lines referencing the first recipe line. So now I can just, and if you add a new recipe line right now, it automatically references that first line. So now I could add my Mac 1s in there, and I could add my Lyras in there, and they're all going to reference this information. What's super cool about this, and I didn't figure this part out on my own, I found this out in a group chat that this exists, but if I tweak my phase here, it is being referenced by all the lines below it. So update one, you update all of them. And that goes for all the MA3 in there. The other cool thing is that if you update the values for this one, you're updating it for all of that. But the thing that's been chronically pissing me off that I'm about to show a solution for is that, let's say, for example, I want to do like a shuffled, sparkly, shimmery effect, right? So I store that here. We're going to turn that into a recipe line, a recipe preset. This whole like edit recipe one where you get to watch one fucking fixture flash is totally fucking useless. So instead of that, what I have set up is the ability to move this out into its own preset. And then I have two different available options for how I edit that. That's where these two macros come. Oh, sorry, I should be explaining the extract and ingest macros first. The extract pulls that preset out, ingest puts it back in where it started. And that's just gone right back where it was at before. So we're going to extract that preset again into its own pool item. And now there's two ways that I can choose to edit this. I can call this whole preset as a recipe template, and then I do an if programmer so it's ready to be edited. So now if I go and I'll just show you this macro real quick. You can pause the video, read through, and get an understanding of that. So now I can go through and, figure out, okay, well, I actually want to, update my width based on the amount of negative space that I've got going on. So I might make this, wider so that I have a overall brighter effect, and then I'll hit update, and then we update that preset. That's option 1. Option 2, we'll put that back in, and we'll duplicate this. We'll put our liras in, we'll put our Mac 1s in, make all that strict. Okay, so now we'll just give it a name. We're going to extract that again. So in the same, actually, that's a really bad example of when to use this other one. Let's say I actually wanted to do all of those independently. So we're going to copy this guy to his own preset and turn that into one, copy it, paste, paste. So now each of these is referencing its own set of values. So now if I extract that, we get 3 separate, get rid of this fucking appearance. Really? We get 3 separate presets that we're trying to update. So I can use this call single line on the source preset, and it'll let me pick which recipe line do I want to call into the programmer. It doesn't call it into the recipe editor. It actually goes and figures out, all right, that recipe is using this group at this preset. So it grabs that group, puts it at that preset, as you can see is active here, and then I can go and edit that preset specifically. So if I'm trying to keep individual recipe lines for each fixture type, but it's all going to be part of the same visual effect, that's where this like single line approach comes in, and that's where this call single line macro comes in. Is this allows me to single out which of these lines I'm trying to tweak quickly, instead of having to go, okay, well in here I'm using group 1 on this, so I'll exit that, grab group 1, and it was preset 25.24, which I've got the labeling in there now so that if it doesn't have a name built in, it'll label it with the group name. But even with that, still it's a bit of a slowdown as compared to just saying I want to edit this line of it and we're up and going. So we're going to put that back in. And then this if programmer thing, this is just if you were using the call recipe as template thing, and let's say I went in here and what did I just do? Oh Jesus. Pause. Let's say I was trying to toggle my shortcuts. I delete. Oh, for fuck's sake. All right, call as template, turn off shortcuts, delete this line, delete this line, delete this line. This was an older way that I had done it, and now I just want to be editing that. If programmer already happened when I called this macro. So this is just a clear selection if programmer. Again, that's all that's doing. All right. Yeah, and then you'll get this sometimes, and I don't understand why it's not a consistent timing, but so what the ingest plugin function does is it copies that preset back on top of this recipe line, so nothing's moving, it's being copied and then being relinked. Sometimes even after you've done the re-associating it with the internal recipe line instead of the external preset, the MA's memory hasn't caught up yet to say that no, this is not being referenced anymore. So sometimes you'll get an error or a warning telling you, hey, you're about to delete something important, and you're not. Just always pay attention for the referencing icon here with the arrow pointing to a line. Another important piece of information is that as you delete these, any preset that has a recipe line being referenced, same thing, it's going to warn you that you're deleting something that's being referenced. what it's referring to is the recipe line that's being referenced by the other recipe lines. So again, pay attention for the reference icon. If you don't see it, you're good to delete that preset. The clone attributes in selection macro is it's not really part of like this whole system, but it's just kind of a handy tool I keep around. So like if I'm building, let's say I'll take a fly out, but I want it to actually be a zoom out, but I've already got my form built correctly here, meaning like the transition and timing in relation to dimmer. So what I can do is clone, I'm going to grab tilt, had to think about that. I'm going to hit the macro again, hit zoom. I set it up so you have to click it twice so that you can switch between encoder pages, or clone high priority, and now zoom is in my effect. So I can off my tilt, off my pan. It's going to be out of phase because of when the cloning happened. And now I can just go into my focus presets and I'll integrate wide. I'll integrate narrow. Ooh. There we go. And if I go back here and store universal, clear out, we see that we've now created a zoom out effect. So that is how I copy attributes from one copy information from one attribute to another in a phaser. And this is what that macro looks like. Just clone selection, this at selection, that if programmer. All right, and then the restore preset references shouldn't really need this because of the way that I am handling selective information. Shouldn't require the use of this. So I'll show you what I'm doing for selective presets first. So I'm going to grab my Lyras, and if I put them in highlight, but if I go to, we don't need these anymore, effects up, effects down, stage right, stage left. All of that is aiming correctly. Those are the presets I built my circle effect with. But you'll see it's because of this universal information. When I click on this, it's creating a position preset that's referencing the universal scope of those presets, because those presets did also include universal information. That's all right. We're going to go ahead and store that anyways. I know it looks ugly. Then we're going to convert that. So just to be clear, well, fuck off. If I grab my Lyra and do that, it's still broken. It still looks like shit. We're still aiming at the wall. But if I turn it into a recipe and call it up, we're good to go. Specifically, the last part of my macro for that is a cook command. And it seems like what the situation is if the phaser has universal information, it will default to using that. Or if the phaser was built with universal information, when you call it with fixtures that have the selective information available, it will still use the universal information because that is what the phaser info is pointing to. But when you cook it, that's when the software reevaluates the preset scope and will grab the correct information. So I've got one that's symmetrical as well. Again, looks like shit. Not only looks like shit, but also they're all going the same direction. We'll do the same thing here. Actually should have gone ahead and done that with my, let's do 360 with 2 wings. Store here, overwrite. Great, we see we have a matrix in there. When I turn that into a recipe and call it up, did I not do the wings? I did do the wings. Did I not use, oh, I used counterclockwise instead of symmetrical. That would be why. There we go. Now we have our symmetrical circle. So I'm going through and explaining this in all these steps, but you can see how quickly I was able to throw together a symmetrical circle effect. And then I can go in there as well and add in my Mac 1s as well. So now if I call this up, Mac 1s are in the same phaser. And that's all using selective presets that have been updated for these fixtures. So coming back to the purpose of this restore preset references macro, what it does is it grabs all the fixtures in the target preset. I don't have any phasers built with purely selective information anymore, meaning presets that don't have a universal option available. But if I did, this grabs the preset containing the recipes. So I would call this on this item, which has the recipe lines in it. It grabs all the fixtures in it, compresses them all into the same grid cell, so it puts them all in grid 0, 0, makes a group, clones that group to itself, and then recooks the preset. So the cloning forces the selective information to take, because sometimes if you've built a selective phaser and you try to reference that with a group that phaser wasn't built with, it just shoves hard values in there. So the clone reassociates the preset references in the phaser, and then the cook repairs all of the MA3 shit that was supposed to be happening. I don't have that set up. I don't want to make this video much longer. Again, this was supposed to be the short rundown, and this still took 16 minutes. So there's my phaser workflow. If you want to use these little helper plugins, they're available on my website for purchase. Hopefully this is going to help some people be able to work with the MA3 in a way that is more familiar and not being forced to use just recipes for everything always, and not be able to have selective phasers update correctly. So hopefully I've solved some problems for some people here, because I've been using this. At this point, I never thought I would say it, but I vastly prefer MA3 to MA2, and I feel like I'm significantly faster at building phasers than I was at building effects now. So some things to fix in the software still. Would love to see the replace keyword, but overall, yeah, this workflow is starting to work really well for me.